guys, it's Bunny and welcome to today's video and welcome to another WWE reaction. This video was recommended by Emin King and he said, can you please react to the Icon Sting story and the rise and fall and rise again of Dustin Rhodes? I did find natural the rise and fall and rise again of Dustin Rhodes by Wrestling with Andy. I don't know if that's the one you want, but kind of similar title. And Wrestling with Andy does the best documentaries about wrestlers. I really love it. So I'm gonna go react to this one.
The name Rhodes conjures up a lot of feelings for wrestling fans. With the exception of the McMahons and maybe the Harts, the Rhodes are probably the most iconic family in the history of the industry. The patriarch, Dusty, is iconic for his run in the NWA during the 70s and 80s, as well as for his time as a booker for both WCW and NXT. The youngest sibling, Cody, has recently become a huge component in starting up AEW, the first major wrestling promotion to compete with WWE since the death of the aforementioned WCW nearly 20 years ago. Nestled right in the middle of them is the oldest child, the son of a plumber, Dustin Rhodes, who, when all is said and done, may not have a career that changed the industry as much as his family did, but may have had the best career overall nonetheless. Join us today as we take a look at the complicated, though never dull history of the man himself.
What is he doing?
The rise and fall and rise again of Dustin
Rhodes.
Rhodes.
Woo.
The future legend began his life as Dustin Patrick Runnels on April 11, 1969 in Austin, Texas. Much of his early life would be spent with his father absent, something which would have a big impact on the young
because
child.
of WWE, right?
By the time he reached his
traveling
teenage years, his dad Dusty was already NWA champion, giving Dustin a taste of what the celebrity life was like, with all its ups and downs included. The weight of expectation that the young Rhodes son must have felt during this time would have been huge, given how successful his father was. And this was only amplified after he decided he wanted to follow his footsteps and join the wrestling world. Dusty was at first hesitant to break his son into the business, knowing the havoc he had played with his own personal life, but eventually he was worn down and started off Dustin as a referee in Florida Championship Wrestling. Here, the eldest Rhodes' son worked hard and trained even harder, quickly graduating to his in-ring debut on September 13, 1988, where he defeated local wrestler Bob Cook. For his in-ring character, Dustin would take his father's stage name as his own, labeling himself Dustin Rhodes and quickly capturing a reputation as a prodigy. It wouldn't be long before he captured the NWA Florida Heavyweight Championship from Al Perez on May 23, 1989. Prior to this, however, Dustin had already started working with World Championship Wrestling, where his father was a top star and booker. His initial run there saw him team with Kendall Windham, son of the legendary Blackjack Mulligan, and brother to Dustin's future tag partner, Barry Windham. He would also work a few singles matches, but would exit the company following Dusty's firing in late 1989. From here, the young prodigy would go on to do tours for both All Japan Pro Wrestling and the USWA in Memphis before signing with WWE in late 1990 at the referral of his father. Here, the Rhodes family would team up to battle it out against Ted DiBiase and Virgil. They would be unsuccessful in this feud, with both leaving the company right after. Though this would not be the last time that Dustin would do business with Vince McMahon. For now, though, the Rhodes would return to WCW, with Dustin now going by the name The Natural, a reference to the skill level he had at such an early stage in his career. This was also where he began teaming up with Barry Windham, the two entering into a number of different feuds over 1991 and 1992, until they split up after Windham turned on his partner. It was for the best anyway, because Dustin's singles breakout would come soon after in January 1993, where he was able to win a tournament for the vacant WCW United States Championship, beating the legendary Ricky Steamboat in the final, a move which proved just how much potential the company saw in him. Rhodes would eventually lose that title to a young up-and-comer named Steve Austin, but he needn't have worried, because he would go on to bigger and better things, feuding with the likes of Arn Anderson and Terry Funk. His time with WCW would come to an end after he was fired for blading during the infamous King of the Road match at 1995's uncensored pay-per-view, something which was strictly against WCW's corporate policy at the time. On a side note, if you've never seen the King of the Road match, you have to go back and watch it, because it really has to be seen to be believed. It featured both Dustin and his opponent,
I don't know where I can find
fighting in the back of a moving truck that was covered in hay. The goal of the match was to climb to the front of the
crazy.
truck and be the first
Imagine
to
like a
sound
police
the horn.
officer just.
Truly one of the strangest matches in wrestling history. But that was in Dustin's past now.
And
he had to
smelliest.
start looking towards the future. What he didn't realize at the time was that he was about to stumble into what would go on to become the defining character of his career.
Okay.
Hollywood-obsessed drag queen who adorned themselves in gold, looking like an Oscar statue, and going
Did
by
he get
the
bullied
nickname
by
the
this?
Bizarre One. Legend has it that when Vince McMahon initially pitched the character to Dustin, he accepted immediately, jumping at the chance to work
That
for
is
WWF
so
again.
weird.
Then, once the call was over,
Like,
he
you never would
immediately
imagine
picked up the
him
nearest
loving
dictionary
this character.
so he could find out what androgynous meant. Needless to
I don't
say,
even
he was
know.
surprised by the answer
Sorry.
and quickly became concerned about what he had gotten himself into. There were
Yeah.
also rumors around the time that the character was just one more massive rib that the company was playing on the Rhodes family, similar to how Vince had Dusty
Oh.
dress in polka dot ring gear when he had wrestled
Oh,
with the
that's
company
mean. But
previously.
like back
It's
then,
no
that was
secret
like
that McMahon
normal,
notoriously
right?
felt WCW and anyone involved with them needed to be shown as lower down on the pecking order, so there was a lot of credence given to this.
Wow,
Regardless
that's
of the
mean.
reason and the concerns of Dustin, he threw himself into it with gusto, creating something totally unique. He would often use mind games to
Ooh.
confuse his opponents. This included groping them mid-match, something that was, needless to say,
that's so
quite
weird!
controversial at the time, with the character drawing a lot of heat
It
from
still is in
fans and
wrestling. I don't
wrestlers alike.
know.
Even Scott
Hey,
Hall
did he
allegedly
get
refused
spat
to work
on?
with him, and Ahmed Johnson almost beat him up for real after Goldust gave him an on-screen kiss. Runnels himself admitted to struggling with the character during the first few months, as it didn't match his personality at all. People have spent a lot of energy discussing whether Goldust, or at least WWE's portrayal of it at the time, was a positive or negative overall. Some have argued that it was one of the sparks that kickstarted the Attitude Era, and helped challenge fans' perceptions of sexuality in wrestling.
That's true.
Still, others suggested that portraying the character as a dastardly heel and encouraging fans to boo him made the whole thing pretty homophobic.
Yeah, that's mean.
Dustin's thoughts on the matter are that he never intended to offend anyone in the gay community with his portrayal.
True,
and that
I don't
playing
think.
Goldust gave
Yeah,
him a
I don't
greater
think that has
appreciation
anything
for
to
the
do with
abuse
him.
that they would have to go through in daily life. This is
That's
based on
also
some of-
so true. Like the bullying, like I immediately expected, like, oh, in wrestling with all these macho men, you know, like especially back then. But like he really fought for gay men and the rights. Like this is such an iconic thing, you know, like he has done a lot, and he was bullied a lot, but he went with it. Maybe people looked at it in different manner.
the reactions he would get from fans. Over the years, the opinion of Goldust has definitely shifted back
Thanks,
towards the
yeah.
positive, with most praising Runnels for throwing himself headfirst into the performance. Regardless of this, the fan temperature of the character at the time was very heated, and the company, feeling pressure from
maybe if he
outside
didn't have
influences,
that
quickly
makeup
decided
would
to
be
tone
better.
down some of his more overt traits,
Oy.
even adding Dustin's real-life wife, Terry Runnels, then going by the name Marlena, to the act. Marlena was presented as a cigar-smoking film director who stood at ringside and watched the performance of her client.
Cigars.
She was seductive and mysterious, complimenting Goldust and going some way towards making him seem more heterosexual to the 90s fans' eyes.
Okay.
With these alterations made, Goldust would go on to have an iconic feud with WWE legend Rowdy Roddy Piper, something which culminated in his best match at the time, the Hollywood Backlot Brawl at
Oy.
WrestleMania 12. The whole thing was a wild backstage fight, which even managed
like
to
an
incorporate
action
car chases
movie.
and references to the O.J. Simpson murder trial. It eventually ended up back in the ring with Goldust being stripped down to his lingerie, something
Ew,
which
why is
Dustin
he
had to
wearing
get personally
that?
approved by Vince McMahon 3 days before the event, and losing the match. What makes this one relevant even today is that it's almost a precursor for the cinematic style of matches that not only WWE, but AEW have
Undertaker.
been putting on during the ongoing global pandemic.
Ah.
With Dustin currently working for AEW, we wonder if he had any hand at all in helping to create the recent Stadium Stampede match,
Probably.
given his experience with this kind of thing. Of course, no one could know how that the match would be so influential back then. Goldust and
True.
Piper just wanted to put on the best show they could.
Oh no.
After it, Dustin's stock rose in the
I
company.
still don't wanna
and he
see any
feuded with a
wrestler
number of
wearing
top
that
WWE
and
superstars
wrestling.
over the course of 1996, including Ahmed Johnson, The Undertaker, and Hunter Hearst Helmsley, turning babyface for the first time during the latter feud. By May 1997, with the Attitude Era just about to explode and reality becoming more of a focus on wrestling television, Goldust revealed his identity as the son of the legend Dusty Rhodes on camera for the first time since joining WWE.
Aww.
From here, he would go on to feud with Brian Pillman, a dispute that would have to be cut short when Pillman tragically died of heart disease. Dustin was going through some serious substance abuse issues at the time, and you would have hoped that this would come as a wake-up call, but sadly, it didn't help, and these would only get worse as time went on. By late 1997, Dustin's personal demons were beginning to have a negative effect on his marriage, and had even bled into his on-screen character. On screen, Goldust began having a crisis of personality, referring to himself as the artist formerly known as Goldust and dropping Marlena for his new manager Luna Vachon. During this time, he went through several different variations of his character, including Dusty Dust, Marilyn Manson Dust, and Sable Dust, just to name a few, each weirder than the last.
Oh my god,
By mid-1998, the character had evolved again to become a born-again Christian character, ashamed of his flamboyant past. Though, and by May 1999, the party was over. Dustin's substance abuse issues would contribute not only to his exit from WWE, but also his divorce from Terry Runnels.
Yeah, this is the thing, like, you can do work, but if you don't enjoy what you are doing, then it feels like work, and it doesn't feel like something you are proud of, and it leads into sadness, maybe depression, unfortunately. So if you don't like your work, you have to find something else that you enjoy, honestly, because you don't want to suffer throughout your whole life, and it all bleeds into your relationship, your family, like everything.
The lowest periods of his career and life, as he found himself lost in the wilderness for several years. During this period, he returned to WCW.
Oh no, that was him?
A character who was first introduced with vignettes.
Poor guy! He always got the worst characters. This is by far the worst.
Him peering through children's windows. It's
Uh-uh.
not clear what they were going for here, but it obviously wasn't something
Backfired.
that was going to work.
Backfired.
As in the character's in-ring debut, he would immediately break kayfabe and trash the gimmick, blasting WCW and head booker Vince Russo for coming up with it. The truth behind the scenes was that the character had to be axed after Ted Turner's Standards and Practices team expressed concern that the gimmick could be misinterpreted as that of a child abductor.
Yeah.
Instead, Dustin took on the moniker of the American Nightmare, a play on his father's gimmick of the American Dream, and something which would be carried on by his younger brother years later.
Yep.
Overall, this run in WCW would end up being pretty uneventful, and all throughout it, Dustin's personal life continued to spiral. He eventually returned to WWE after they bought out WCW in 2001, something which seemed to do him a lot of good, both creative. Perhaps seeing what was happening, WWE allowed Dustin's contract to expire in December 2003. Times were hard for him after this.
Yeah.
He spent several years jumping between the indie circuit and brief runs with WWE and TNA. He even made a couple of appearances for All Japan Pro Wrestling, but could never seem to gather any roots anywhere. His addiction problems always following him wherever he went.
Aww.
The lowest point of this entire period may have been the 2007 to 2008 run in TNA as Black Rain, a character who was intended to be the dark mirror to Goldust. However, with Dustin's life and emotional state in tatters, his portrayal of the gimmick was often just sad to watch.
Okay.
He would come out to the ring carrying a rat and looking overweight and out of shape, his ring gear resembling a bin bag more than anything else. Unsurprisingly, this run also ended poorly, with TNA eventually firing him as he was unable to get his life under control and was fast becoming a liability.
Sad.
After 3 months of not showing up on television, his profile was removed from the TNA roster page, and he was released from his contract. There was still hope, though.
Why are they doing this to him?
On October 26, 2008, Dustin returned once again to WWE as Goldust, starting what would be a series of appearances over the next year.
Okay.
This time, though, he
feel like Goldust was the best for
his
him.
Life back together and beating his addictions. It wasn't easy, but with help from those around him, including his father and brother, who were both now in the same company as him again.
Okay, yeah, all
Dustin
three.
seemed to be
That's
on the right track finally. By mid-2009, he was a regular on-screen character and had been moved to the ECW brand, where he could work with some of the younger up-and-coming superstars and impart his wisdom on them. Dustin seemed to be revived by this, giving us some of his best work in years and showing that he was just as good in the ring as ever. If anything, by March 2010, Dustin, with WWE's trust in him seemingly having been regained, was moving back up the SmackDown brand, and later in the year, he would be moved over to the company's flagship show, Raw, during the annual supplemental draft. He also took part in the 3rd season of NXT, back when it was in a game show format and not the 3rd brand as we know it today.
Oh,
Here,
okay.
he would serve as a mentor to the rookie Oksana.
Didn't know that that's how
He
NXT
even took part in a pretty
started.
cheesy wedding story where he was due to marry Oksana so she could gain a green card. She
Oh,
would, of course, turn on him after the ceremony, but he needn't have worried. His life finally seemed to be back on the rails again.
yeah.
On December 7, 2010, Dustin suffered a shoulder injury and began working as a backstage producer during his recovery period. This seemed to do him even more good, as he was now able to focus all his time on helping out other wrestlers.
Yeah,
He
that's
would be
really
briefly
good.
released from the company during this period due to staff cuts, but would return again at the 2013 Royal Rumble, once more as an in-ring competitor and still able to move like a man 20 years his
That
junior.
mustache.
He would even get remarried during this period, tying the knot with Terrell Marie Roche on June 22nd, 2012.
Good for him.
Yes, things were looking up. And to make matters even better, this was the period when Dustin got involved with what many believe to be his best and most emotional work as a WWE wrestler, teaming up with his brother Cody and being managed by his father Dusty as they took on the Authority, eventually winning the tag team titles from The Shield in one of the most feel-good moments that WWE fans had seen in years. Over time, this story would eventually evolve to see Cody becoming Stardust, an over-the-top and theatrical character similar to what his brother had played upon arrival in the company back in 1995. Stardust would eventually turn heel on his family, forcing Dustin to try to bring him back to his senses. The two had hopes, along with many WWE fans, that this feud would culminate in a match between the brothers at WrestleMania. However, Vince McMahon felt differently, believing that the match wasn't big enough for that, and so it was blown off the month before at Fastlane in 2015. This move was cited as one of the primary reasons for Cody eventually leaving WWE, but we'll come back to that again in a minute. Dustin, revitalized and putting on the best work of his career even at this stage, felt like he had so much more to offer to the company and the younger generation of up-and-comers. However, he was dismayed to find out that WWE did not seem to agree with this. He floundered in a variety of undercard feuds over the next few years.
Why would you do this to him, man?
Or give any meaningful rub
Like
to
the
else.
last train that you can use a wrestler while they are still kinda young, you know, like they kinda still have things to give you, and you just not use them. Like, why?
Dustin would say that he lost his passion for wrestling during this time, a sad statement from someone whose life and family had always been so enveloped in the business. When Dusty Rhodes died on June 10th, 2015, it hit Dustin hard, and many close to him were worried that it would cause him to spiral out of control again. Thankfully, it did not, and he was able to use the experience to reevaluate what he wanted out of his life and his career. Knowing what he still had left in him, he would run out his contract with WWE. And when his brother Cody announced that he was starting the first legitimate competition to WWE's crown in almost 2 decades, Dustin knew exactly where he needed to be.
Yeah, next to his brother, right?
His first appearance for All Elite Wrestling took place at their inaugural pay-per-view, Double or Nothing, on May 25th, 2019. Here, Dustin and his brother finally got a chance to have their singles match the way they always wanted it.
That's
and
what,
what a
right?
match it was. Fans and critics alike raved over their brutal and emotionally charged performance,
I don't
with
think
many
your
fans
father
calling
wants
it the
to see
best match
this.
of either man's career, and Dave Meltzer rating it 5 stars. To watch it again a year later, it truly holds up as one of the best wrestling matches of the last decade.
I don't think
If
I
you're
would
going
be
to watch
able to see something like this, though. It's too bloody. I've never seen wrestlers more bloody.
any Dustin Rhodes match, this is the one. Which, given how late it came in his decades-long career, says a lot about just how good he still is.
Yeah.
Still, he wasn't done quite yet.
And did you
From
read the
here,
natural
Dustin would sign
in
a
the
full-time
back of
contract with
his
AEW,
costume?
working as a
Where
player
he
coach
started.
and trying to build the next generation of wrestlers. He has worked particularly close with the women's division during this time, and with the rise of the likes of
nice.
Britt Baker and Hikaru Shida as of late, he's clearly doing something right.
Oof.
He still wrestles, of course, too. His last great match being an all-out war with rising star Lance Archer. Here,
still
Dustin
wrestled. This was
completely
3 years
unselfish
ago.
in his defeat, and managed to make the Murder Hawk monster look like a killer in the process.
Yeah.
Ever since then, there have been whispers that the Natural may retire soon, but in our opinion, that would be a mistake, as he still seems to have plenty in the tank, and he continues to be one of the smoothest wrestlers on the roster.
And
It's
his moves are
likely that his
really
in-ring
good.
career will
He's
wind
really
down
quick.
more and more as time goes on, but now we imagine he's still got a few more classics left in him before he hangs up his boots for good. Whenever he decides to call it a day, he can sleep safe in the knowledge that his legacy is secure. Ultimately, Dustin Rhodes will go down as a wrestler who had heavier expectations on his shoulder than almost any other in history.
Exactly.
Given who his father was,
yeah,
and his brother.
like this could be like a blessing in disguise, but at the same time, like having someone, your father or a family member, and you follow the same career path that they did, but them having like such a huge success, you can learn quicker from them. You can be referred by them. Like you can have that road paved for you, but also that actual person would expect so much more from you, and you would always feel like you need to prove yourself to them as well, to the whole world, that you belong there and not that you are just the son of someone, you know, like that you have to work double, if not triple, the amount of a nobody who just becomes something, you know?
Has gone on to be. Despite this, he has proven to be an evergreen talent, never losing a step no matter how old he gets. He's one of the smartest minds in the business, and his humble nature and unselfish willingness to pass his knowledge down to the next generation while putting them over strong just goes a long way to show what kind of man he is and where his priorities lie. His personal issues have led to more than a few stumbling blocks for him over the course of his career, but despite this, he's managed to pick himself back up repeatedly and show that he really is one of the most underrated workers in wrestling history.
Nice.
Of course, most will likely remember him for the Goldust
and he does
character
his own
and how it
makeup.
managed to break down so many boundaries in what was
Nice,
acceptable and possible in wrestling. But even aside from that, his WCW work and his recent time in AEW has shown without a shadow of a doubt that he is truly a natural in every sense of the word, and should be remembered as such.
Whose tattoo does he
Well,
have
that's it,
there?
guys.
Like a
What did you
girl
think
or
of the
something?
video? Let us know in the
That was
comments
awesome.
below.
Thank you so much for sharing. I enjoyed it. He threw himself into probably the hardest role that no wrestler would have ever taken, and it endeared him to a generation. He's starting to look more and more like his father every day. One of my all-time favorites. Goldust was a phenomenal gimmick. He knocked it out of the park. I was worried for him when he appeared as Goldust. I was like, oh, that time, you know, in wrestling with Macho Man. But it definitely left an impact, you know, especially in today, how important that is. I think that was really good move, very brave move as well. But that is it, guys, for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to leave a like and subscribe for more. Honestly, liking the video is so easy but so important for me and for the channel to grow, so we can get more people watching WWE and checking my reactions as well and hanging out with us, especially on the live streams. That would be really fun, so we can chit chat a bit more about WWE, which is gonna be in WrestleMania soon, you guys. Both nights I will be live streaming on this channel. That's it. Thanks so much for watching, and see you tomorrow with a brand new video. Bye.